What you have produced is a handful of outrages, and we'll take them one at a time. How's that? Race wasn't the basis of slavery?
It's a simple historical matter. Slavery existed for thousands of years, as far back as there are any records of human beings. Archaeological finds suggest slavery existed before human beings could read and write. A racial difference between the slaves and the enslavers, that is a relatively new phenomenon. You didn't have in ancient times the ability to go to another continent and move millions of people of a different race across the ocean. So you enslaved the people who were nearby. The Europeans enslaved Slavs for centuries before they brought the first black African to the Western Hemisphere. Race got mixed into it in the United States more than anywhere else for a very simple reason. The United States was founded, the Declaration said, all men are created equal. If that's true, then the only way you can justify slavery is to say that some men are less than men. But in Brazil, where Brazil imported more slaves than the United States, there was no such ideology. Brazil was not a democratic country. The whole issue never arose. No, the differences between income between Western Europeans and Eastern Europeans is greater than the difference between blacks and whites in the United States. What I'm saying essentially is that racists may prefer one race to another, but they prefer themselves to everybody else. Differences in income are the rule, they are not the exception.
Looking at all these sociological studies that show a persistent gap in incomes, how would you describe that?
Wrong, I think, sums it up. It is not true. Hispanics have a lower per capita income than blacks. Hispanic households and families have a higher income than black households and families, simply because the Hispanic are larger.
This last assertion, race and discrimination, you suggest, are not so closely linked that they move up and down together. First of all, distinguish the two, race and discrimination.
Racism is an attitude inside people's heads. Discrimination is an overt act taking place outside in the real world.
Okay.
So not only with blacks, you find the same thing with Jews in previous centuries, that part of the United States where there was the most racism against blacks, namely the South,
right,
is where black construction workers were much more common than they were in the North, right on into the 20th century. Most people are unaware that in the South, blacks were the construction workers. I remember a professor at Howard University saying that when he was a boy in the South, his father pointed to some man on the street and said, he was the first white construction worker in this town. What I'm saying essentially is that racists may prefer one race to another, but they prefer themselves to everybody else. That was even true in South Africa under apartheid, because that was where the money was.
All right.
Because in the 20s, and particularly as the Depression got underway, construction companies in the South, using black non-union labor, would come up to the North and underbid on government contracts, taking them away. This was very common, to the point where they passed the Davis-Bacon Act, which said that on government contracts, you must pay the prevailing wage. It was translated almost invariably into the union wage.
So your point on the distinction between racism and discrimination is?
Racists may prefer one race to another, but they prefer themselves to everybody else.